Good afternoon. As I was just introduced, my name is Mike Stowe, but what I'd like to do, with your permission, I'd like to speak to you in Portuguese for a couple sentences. You may not understand it as Portuguese, but I'll translate to English when I'm done. How's that? Okay. Olá, Brasil. Meu nome é Mike Stowe. Estou aqui como o atual presidente del Grupo de Interés Especial de Indústria, DSM, ISIG, estabelecido em 2012. Obrigado pela hospedagem e participar nesta conferência do DSM. Thank you. Now, for those of you that did not understand what I said, what I meant to say was, hello, Brazil. My name is Mike Stowe. I'm here as the current chair of the DSM Industry Special Interest Group established in 2012, and thank you for hosting and participating in this DSM conference. There we go. Okay, so I've got an interesting presentation for you today. As you probably heard, I am from a company that makes aerospace products. I do not sell software. I do not sell DSM. Okay, so I had to do a lot of coaching and working with the providers of this technology that, for any number of reasons, could not be here, so I'm speaking on their behalf. And I have 8 different software products to describe to you. So I have 8 presentations at a minimum, and I have my own presentation on either side of it, so I've got 10 presentations to give to you folks. And I don't want you to fall asleep. Some of the presentations are interesting in that what you'll be looking at is a video. In some cases, a video and a narration. In other cases, if I had my laptop here, you'd be watching me trying to navigate the tool myself. Thankfully, I will not be doing that because I'm sure I'd lose you right about then. Okay? So anyway, I've got 10 presentations. I'm thinking I have about an hour and 15 minutes or so. I'm assuming I'm about 8 minutes or so each presentation. And I'm from a company that's schedule-driven. I'm industry. We are schedule-driven. And so I want to be schedule-driven as well. All the content I'll share with you will be made available to you afterwards, so you can get to see a lot more than what I'm going to gloss over here. And also encourage you, because I'm from industry, to seek me out, because there's a lot of things I'll gloss over here because of time constraints. And some of this topic is rather difficult to consume, much less for me to describe to you. So I apologize right up front. I'll be glossing over a few items. So, with that being said, I'm going to move around the room here. I am the current chair of what's called the DSM Industry Special Interest Group, but through my presentation, I'm probably not going to talk much about the DSM. I'm going to talk about industry needs, and how DSM is one of many methods and tools and skills that represent what we need in industry to do what we do in industry. You see 2 websites here. There's a dsmisig.org site. I would encourage you to go visit that because there are case studies. Some of the companies that we've dealt with, and they're very rare case studies, by the way. Industry does not have a habit of sharing our case studies for obvious reasons. Because one of the reasons are we don't want folks to know how screwed up we were to begin with. As to why we did this. But there are a few companies out there that have been gracious enough to share with us what it is that they experience using this approach. So you can get to some of that case study information there. You are probably aware of what Osmar is doing with our prototype site specific to this conference for DSM-ISIG. All the content I'll share with you will populate here. So get to know that familiar website as we move forward here. Okay, a little bit on the history. This is my agenda. I think I just did an introduction. I'll talk about the ISIG history, and I say ISIG, not DSM-ISIG, and you'll see why I'm saying that later on. Then I'm going to spend most of my time talking about what I call the DSM symbiotic technology providers. So there are likely to be some tools here where DSM is at the very, very back end, because what some of these companies discovered is you need to spend a lot of time up front synthesizing and understanding your business, if you would, your objectives and the like, and then go do analysis, okay? And so I'll do an introduction of all the software providers. I'll go through each of their tools as best I can, and talk to you also about other resources. In addition to these particular commercial software vendors, we have other resources out there, some of which Tyson's talked about, some of which you're already aware as far as the journals and the papers and consultants and the like. So it's not just these 8 that I'm speaking to. There are other resources out there that you should take advantage of. And what I'd really looking forward to here is an interactive discussion with you all. What's next, Brazil? I did that for each of these sites. After giving the presentation, I'd look across the room and says, okay, where am I? Melbourne, Kyoto, Fort Worth, where do we go from here? So I'm looking forward to that conversation with you because I want it to be a conversation as to what we should do next based on what it is I've shared with you here. So with that said, this is a cartoon that I use from time to time to demonstrate what we're trying to do with the SIG. This is, of course, an aircraft in a cruise condition. We're at 30,000 feet, 600 miles an hour. Here we are, the iSig, attempting to land on industry that's moving at a very fast pace. You're not interested right now in being distracted. You have enough challenges as industry. You're just moving along. And if there's something that can help you fly faster, better range, or what have you, I'm using the analogy of aerospace because that's where I'm from. We want to impact that by telling you that there's some things that you should take advantage of specific to your industry, where you'll be able to operate more efficiently. But as you can tell from that cartoon, we're still trying to land on the wing. The wing is moving rather fast. So industry as a whole will say, well, Mike, we still don't have any visibility of what you're doing, but I'm still trying to land on the wing, and with your help, we're going to land on the wing and hang on as well, okay? Okay, our motivation, at the end of a DSM conference in Boston in 2011, we decided at that point in time to create an industry special interest group, and we formed a steering team. I was elected the chair, and it's supposed to be a two-year tour duty. Last time I checked the math, I'm here for a little longer than 2 years. So if there's some candidates out there I can pass the baton to, I'm looking for them. Then we had some other folks on that membership of the steering team as well, software folks, Raytheon, which is an aerospace company, and others. So that was the membership at the time that we started this after 2011. Don't try and read this chart, please, but what I'm sharing with you here is we had goals that we started with. What is the purpose and goals of our SIG? And we were schedule driven. We said by the end of these particular quarters and whatnot, we had goals that we wanted to meet. If you notice, there are a lot of not mets on here. So as a chairman, I obviously screwed up, okay? But we're still going along. We've met some of them because, as I'll share with you here, one of the first things we did is, if I can go to this next slide, after Kyoto, is we found out from industry a couple things after doing a survey. We surveyed industry folks around the planet as best we could, and we analyzed their responses. And the 2 responses that stuck out, one had to do with case studies. Where are those case studies so we can understand what risks have been mitigated by using this approach? That was one need. The other need was networking. They wanted to be able to network with folks. So what we did is we created a LinkedIn group in 2012, and we also created what Tyson already mentioned, some webinars to be available for industry to get up the learning curve. So as a result of what we discovered in 2012, we went and proceeded with a LinkedIn group, and of course, getting as many case studies as possible to share with our industry peers around the planet. Here are the webinars I spoke of. Tyson mentioned this before. We created 6 of them, 6 webinar recordings. The first couple were primarily about Tyson and describing the context and the techniques and the like, and the remaining ones were actual case studies from Deere, from Apple, and I think one other one, I think it was an Australian company. And these webinars are available at that website that I showed you earlier, the dsmisig.org. And I encourage you to take a look at them. And they're free. Back when we created this, these were for sale, but they're now free. That was after Melbourne. Paris, in 2014, we had a workshop, industry workshop, and again, our goal there was challenges to integrated performance, and we had a number of presenters there, and what was interesting, when we left that particular conference, there was a statement of need that, for the most part, most of the industries recognized with the folks that were there and also those that some of us were representing. And they had to do with these 4. improving project and process performance, using automation to rebalance work, integrating the digital native workforce. In my company, as well as others, we have a generation showing up and working with us that are more digital natives. So we have to find a way to incorporate that, I'm going to say that diverse or culture into our environment, which is what item number 3 is about. And then number 4, delivering integrated solutions that meet internal, external, and regulatory requirements. So these were need statements that we came up with that have a global reach to all industries at the end of the conference in Paris in 2014. What have we done since then? There's still need statements. We're still working on that. In Texas last year, we had a similar session as this, and what we discovered then there as well is I then started to formulate, I am now Mr. Industry, or Mrs. Industry. I said, you know what? I need to be able to write a document, a very abstract, simple document that says, if I am Mr. or Mrs. Industry, here is a simple description of my needs, without specifying any tools or techniques or whatnot. I am industry. So I created this complex system architecture concept paper, and you notice I took the term DSM off of this. You don't see this on here. Because if I'm industry, I have these simple needs. These are what my needs are, what my goals are, and I'm not prescribing a solution. I'm just saying my needs statement. So this particular document was, for the most part, discussed briefly last year at Fort Worth. And since that time, I've added some more content. And with that, I'm going to talk to you about what is primarily in this document. I'm now trying to categorize industry at 3 views. One's perspectives, objectives, and applications. And having said that, what I also did is I added characteristics of each of the perspectives, what I call the applications and what I call objectives. If you don't have these 3 in mind, you're not industry. Okay? You have to understand that you have objectives as business. You have to have that communicated and well understood. You may have many objectives or few objectives, and those objectives change over time. So that has to be well understood before you embark on looking for different methods and rules and tools and the like. DSM, by the way, fits on the 3.0. I don't mention DSM because DSM is one of many methods, primarily for analysis. I use DSMs for analysis, not for synthesis. I use other methods and tools for synthesis. Okay? This applications perspective here is speaking, interestingly enough, about any business that you walk into. There's a picture, a big picture somewhere, maybe in many people's heads or in documents and the like, of what it is that they're doing today, and I call that the baseline. In my business, we have to understand that baseline as an aerospace company, because we have to be able to manage changes and update our baseline as more changes come online. Understanding that baseline is very, very, very important. Very important, because of the issue of change on change and quickly going out of control, getting into chaotic situations you cannot pull yourself out of. So being able to develop a baseline where you use these tools not to draw a picture is extremely important, because you want to manage the changes to that baseline as you move forward when you want to change something. And the other perspective of applications is capacity. What is your capacity to do what it is that you like to do, either in modeling and simulating or transitioning from your baseline to another state? So far, so good? Okay, great. So I'm now going to exit this and move to my next topic, which is going to be my introduction to the technology providers. So what I'm here to talk to you about are these 8 software companies. And I call them DSM symbiotic software companies, because some of these tools, when you look at them right up the front, they're not DSM tools. They're tools that help us to understand a baseline, the interactions between product process people and that sort of thing. And then with that model well understood, we can then proceed to export that data into DSM applications or other applications that do analysis. It's a very important point. So I'll go through a basic introduction, what you like to see, then I'll go into a folder describing each of these. And what you'll see, depending on who I'm describing, I've asked each of these software companies to answer these 4 questions. who you are logo-wise, software, and your link, summary page, when you were established, what your principal applications are, your case study references, what are your growth plans, and contacts page. In addition to doing that, for those that gave me that information, by the way, and that all did, I asked them in addition to either give me permission to review their website, or a short video, or overview slides, or an interactive demo. And I have 8, and they all chose some combination of the following. Okay? So far, so good? Okay. So let me do this. Let me go launch the very first group, which is going to be the Adept company. And we'll get going here. And with Adept, it happens to be a company that decided that they would not give me a video. And as a result, all I'm going to share with you then is basically what their company is about in a narrative fashion. So Adept is a company that is specific when they initially started, architectural, engineering, construction. What you'll find with some of these software companies, they started in one industry domain. You know, like Lattice started in software, Adept started in construction industry, Boxar started in supply chain and that sort of thing. And since that experience, they've branched out to other areas, if you would, outside of what they started with. But this particular product that they have is, they're basically 2 main thrusts. There is a builder and a manager. And the company was established in 2001. Their principal applications, just as you can read there, are sequencing interdependent processes, and they have case study references. These are references to actual ongoing, well, primarily case studies have been completed that they've gotten permission on from companies to share with other folks. Their growth plans, 2015, they had in excess of $4 million, and their forecast for 2016 is close to $5 million. And their plan is to, as you can read there, to continue the growth in the Americas, not just in the UK. This company, by the way, is in the UK. Okay? And here's their contacts information. Let me go back a couple slides here. This particular slide, if you notice, they have basically defined their particular suite of tools in 4 panels. We are looking at define, streamline, plan, and deliver. Their tool set, for the most part, is here in define and streamline. Plan and manage is a consultancy service. What we discovered is a number of these companies, for any number of reasons, would choose not to buy their software. What they want is to have them teamed with Adept to manage their projects. So that's how companies get value out of this technology. Not the expense of doing this themselves, define and streamline. Some have, but more often than not, you will see probably in some of the other companies, they want to buy that experience, buy the experience for you to come in and manage their business to get the gains that were promised, if in fact you could invest in getting your own tool set to define and streamline. So that's an important point that you'll see in a couple of these software companies. Any questions, comments? Okay. Next up will be Boxar. So let me get out of here. Okay. And what Boxar did is they answered my call. They gave me an overview of their company and what their content is about. And they also gave me a video. So you'll get to watch a video. But in certain cases, they gave me a video without narration. Some of these companies did. So in the case of Boxar, they chose not to narrate while they're making the video, but they have text popping up all over the place. I tried to memorize that text. It didn't work. So we'll breeze through the video as best we can, time permitting. You know, I only wanted it to be about 4 or 5 minutes. This one, I think, was around 6 or 7 minutes, so I may cut it short. But you'll get some idea of the mechanics of the particular piece of software, what it does and what it doesn't do. So that's coming up right after I go through this quick introduction of their company. And I won't read all these slides again. They'll be made available for you. Boxar. This particular company, as I'll show in another slide, came out of the aerospace engine development organization, Rolls-Royce. That's how this particular company started. And they focus specifically on supply chain. Supply chain. Thank you, dear. So as you can see, an item on here, supply and optimization, that is their strength. That's where they started. And you can read the rest of those items there. There's another slide that shows basically, again, some marketing about what they're about. The title, Boxar, comes from the concatenation of two words, boxes and arrows. A year or so ago, they were not called Boxar. They were called Plexus. But what they discovered with all their clients is they were drawing lots of diagrams with boxes and arrows. And so it became a marketing thing to, hey, let's rename ourselves simply to boxes and arrows. And they do a darn good job of building models with boxes and arrows. And the box, of course, represents a node, and the arrows represents relationships. And we'll talk about that later, and you'll see that in the video. They're about managing complexity, to manage risks, manage outcomes. You've probably seen this before. They're a 12-year R&D in field, 5-year map, and the like. Let's see, what else do they say about themselves here? Is that it? Oh, I thought there was something else. Okay. Many of the world's largest organizations, I am one of their customers. As you can see here, they're working with the big guys, a lot of them in the aerospace side. And they have other companies, of course, some of which they can't discuss or share with you here of their client list. And their point of contact, this gentleman, Fraser Hamilton, I think is in South America. And he is their Global Alliance's point of contact. So he's someone that I would recommend that anyone in South America make contact with to get more information on Boxar. So let me cue up this video. And I won't have you sit through all of it. I'll just get most of it started here, and you can kind of see what's going on with these folks. I think it started. And I won't have you listen or watch this video. You can see some of the text is bouncing around here, and I'll probably stop it after about 4 minutes, 4 or 5 minutes, where you get the gist of what they're doing with their particular tool. Could you guys hear me without this mic? No. Like I said, I'm not going to try and read their narration. I would encourage you to seek out this video at your convenience. And beyond getting this tutorial, this overview, all these companies are encouraging folks to get a loaner copy. Because something I've learned over many years of using these tools, you have to get tactile with them. You have to play with them. You have to try and have it break your mind. You break it. Okay, that's how you learn at a faster rate, in my humble opinion. So it's in the best interest of these software companies to get the loaner copies, the trainer copies in your hands, so you can better understand what it is that they do and don't do, and basically get up the learning curve as best you can. Boxes and arrows. Powerful visualization tool. Very powerful. There isn't a limit to the size of the models, and I know that well because of what we're doing with this particular tool at Boeing. It's, you should mention you can show a DSM as well. Yes, I don't think they do that here, but here's an example of the strength of the tool being this type of boxes visualization, but to a button push, one button push, it will create a DSM. And then have all these other windows to do all these other types of analysis, some of which Tyson talked about. So this is an example yet of another tool that spent a lot of their effort and energy building the model, building the baseline, what I mentioned earlier before, getting a good picture, if you would, understanding all the dependencies in a static form, and even time-stamping these things because these baselines tend to change. They're rather dynamic. But a lot of effort is spent on building the model. When I build models at Boeing, I spend a lot of time here because it's very difficult to get that information to make sure it's correct before you do the analysis. The analysis is very easy with tools like this, with some of the other features that are built in. Have you guys seen enough? Boxes and arrows? Stop them? Okay, great. All right, I'm going to stop this one. Okay, next up are the folks from Japan. And I thought I had, oh, it's an Acrobat file. That's what my problem is. So here's what happened with this particular software provider. I asked for a PowerPoint file. They didn't say no, but they gave me a PDF file. And they also made it very clear to me, this is Japan, that I should not share this too far and wide. So I'm still negotiating with them for me to post this in a very, very public setting. And I think I kind of have their concurrence, but this is what they've given me so far. They didn't give me the PowerPoint slide, but they gave me a PDF file. So unfortunately, yeah, if you wouldn't mind sliding through this. It works? Okay, good. I guess I didn't know how to do that. So IQAV is from a consulting company, engineering consulting company. It's called Information Services International, Dentsu. I met them when we were at that conference in Kyoto. And as you can see here, this is supposed to work, huh? Wow, Tyson, I'm impressed. They have a history, been around since 2008. Their marketplace is primarily all Japanese. And you have to wonder why they chose to do that. They have their reasons, they're not sharing that with me, but the fact that I asked them to share this with you speaks volumes. They want to learn from us and you to learn from them. And what their products are and their experiences are immeasurable. They are doing quite a bit in Japan. And so I'm just giving you a little taste of what they've got here. Obviously, they didn't give me the software to play with, but I'm not going to try and read these slides. I'm just going to bounce through a few of them. You can kind of get the idea of how they grew historically from visualization, basic tasks of scheduling, to the breakdown within engineering, decision-making, and functional design and model-based design. And this is their three major pillars: how to visualize thinking, going from that to preventative measures, and then relating engineering to schedule, visualization, and task. And you can see what they also did is they kind of summarized these two pillars into what they call R&E management, and then these two to task management. Okay, what's next? This is a slide that didn't quite belong here, but this was the file they gave me. This is a little bit more detail on how they talk about the purpose of visualization of thinking. You can start in requirements, go into performance, function, parameter parts, unit, and car. Okay, and next up, a little bit more detail on visualization of thinking using tree block charts and two-dimensional tables. And you can see over here a little bit to the right, a matrix of sorts. And they also, of course, use their own techniques for building network diagrams using, in this case, rectangles and lines instead of boxes and arrows. But they're doing pretty much the same thing there, and block charts. Again, a slide that was put in there errantly. Oh, and here they're talking about preventative measures. You heard about what the acronym DRBFM stands for. Again, some more of what they're doing with their particular tool sheet. Can you imagine me getting this software and attempting to do a show and tell here, this particular one? No way. So I'm glad they declined me getting a copy of their software. And I think I'm almost close to the last one. Relating engineering to schedule. This, I think, is the last of the steps involved with their life cycle of their product. Again, taking the R&E breakdown, ideas from designers, working into the schedule for execution purposes, They're talking about working with veterans and getting the information shared, knowledge transfer, and the like. Okay. And I believe this is the last slide. They're talking about purpose of their visualization of tasks. And I don't believe there's any contact information here. They weren't too friendly about contacting them. Oh, there's something else. How to use IQAVIS. More specifics on their tool. But I haven't given up on these folks. They wanted to remind me, Mike, this is confidential. So be careful. So anyway, that's IQAVIS. So how many more do I have? Let's see. Okay. Let me get out of this guy here. Next up, Lattice. Tyson mentioned Lattice. Some of you are probably already aware of them. They, interesting enough, gave me a copy of their software. And it's on my laptop. And my goal was to actually get on my laptop and navigate through it. It's very user-friendly. In fact, one of the things I often recommend to folks is if you can, and Lattice is very forthright, they will give you a copy of this software to really have you appreciate some of the things that Tyson talked about in his tutorial about what really is it DSM. What does it mean to do sequence, cluster, to tier, to partition. Even though Lattice is specific to software, you'll still get up the learning curve of what it is to mean a DSM type methodology and DSM tools. So I'd encourage you to contact these folks to get a copy of their software, loan the software to get up the learning curve. They've been around a while, and their client list is primarily software companies. I envy these folks because I build hardware. And the fact that they can build these DSMs so quickly and you can get so much information and they can make these decisions happen so quick, I envy that. I cannot possibly emulate that in my hardware world. So I'm constantly pushing these guys as a pathfinder for me. One of these days, the hardware people will get our act together, but this company's awesome. About Lattice, they're a leading innovator of software architecture and complexity management since 2004. They have technology roots at MIT, as a number of these companies have. And this is just a partial list of all their companies. And there are many of them out there. They were the first company to apply DSMs to software. They have patented intellectual property. Here again is they have access and permissions to share case studies. So I encourage you to look at these case study files. And I think these are links that are actually operational. The two major products, Lattice Architect and Lattice Web. And their growth plans, interesting enough, is to go beyond software. They have every intention to go beyond software, and they're working on that as we speak. You can kind of see that in the second bullet. They want to go into systems engineering, PLM, application lifecycle, portfolio, irrespective of whether it's software or not software. And so that's where their plans are. And here's the contact information. Okay. Okay. Next up, I believe, is Lumio. And Lumio has a video that's been narrated. So it'll make it a whole lot easier for me to talk to you about that tool. And let me get them up here. So let me go over the overview slides first. And they're rather brief, which is good. They're a complexity software company. They're actually a company that it produces a product, Lumio, among other things, and they're from a company called Redpoint Tession. Some of you folks from Germany obviously know about Tession. Some of the initial founders were part of the DSM community, Mag Moore and company. Won't have you read this, but again, some marketing about what their thought processes are: holistic thinking, sustainability, master complexity. Here they're introducing their primary graphical syntax, where these aren't boxes and arrows. These are now, I'm going to call them nodes and arcs. They use that terminology more so than boxes and arrows, and they're using this graphing technique to basically model dependencies. And with this model, with again some button pushes, you can go create a DSM, you can go create an MDM and the like. That's the strength of this tool. But they spend the effort and energy to build these models and vary the, and you'll see in the video what I'm talking about here. Analysis on the graph. They're using an example here of how they would, I guess they use the term nodes and edges, not nodes and arcs. The edges represent the dependencies. A lot of their clients, I believe, are German auto companies, but they also have other clientele that are outside of auto, and they're just going through an example here of impact on products and process.
Really the only tool that does MDMs?
Yes, to my knowledge, they are currently the only software tool that does MDM. A comment about these software tools. These are the ones that are visible to me. That doesn't say that there aren't companies out there that have their own proprietary tools that may be doing this, but we're just not aware of it. I suspect that's the case because I do the same thing. There are tools that I have that you will never see because we invented it internally for internal use, not for public use. So even though MDM is out there and it's being used and visible with a software product like this, it may be in use elsewhere that you're just not made aware of. Okay? This is just an example. They're talking about vehicle safety and looking at the way they labeled and built the model in these particular clusters and how they related the analysis of the graphs to customize the product and modularizing the product. And again, these are their applications as they market it to their particular clients. And again, you see a number of companies here. Bosch. When I saw the presentation this morning, I knew that Bosch was a client of Lumio. And here's an example that I run across all the time. Companies, some of these companies are huge. And one branch or department doesn't know what the other ones are doing and that sort of thing. This happens all the time. So my Bosch guests have since left, but I need to tell them to contact Lumio and find out who in that company is already using that product or has used that product. Okay. Coming soon, they're, again, just like all the other companies, broadening their application spectrum beyond what their strength is at this point in time. And here are the contacts. So what I'm going to do next is call up their video. Thankfully, it was narrated, and it's a pretty good session. So
this basic matrix represents the meta model of the system. The matrices on the diagonal represent the design structure matrices of the particular domains. If I change the number of nodes in any domain, Lumio automatically changes all the other domains, DMMs as well as DSMs. That is why I can work on a domain in any dataset. My whole system model keeps always actual. Lumio updates the system automatically. Domains I have not worked on are not specified more detailed. They are signalized by a triple frame without any information in the middle. Lumio affords the possibility to import data which has been created before. To load data into a domain, I click with the right mouse button onto the domain and select Import Dataset. I need this function if I want to insert, for example, a whole DMM which is completed before. To load a project which has already been created into the Lumio viewer, I select Open and look for the project which I want to open. Now I'm able to use an MD graph which shows the multiple domain matrix. To activate a single domain, I click on one particular domain in the menu on the left side. The single nodes of the activated domain are shown, but without the edges. To fade in edges, I must access the particular dataset, which is listed under the menu Networks. To choose the complete overview containing the system with all its datasets, I use the button MD Graph. Furthermore, Lumio provides the opportunity to color domains to configure them. Therefore, I click with the right mouse button onto the domain and can assign a color now. To color a particular edge, I click on that edge with the right mouse button and allot a color. I add the same color to all the edges of a dataset by selecting the dataset in the left menu with the right mouse click and coloring it afterwards. To concentrate on colored elements, I use the button Show Highlighted Elements Only. To change the view of a node's locality, I mark a node and use the button Locality until this button has a blue frame. Now a menu opens where I can get an isolated view on this node. Lumio affords the opportunity to show or hide the crosslinks between the nodes that are connected with the selected node. The number of indirect dependencies is represented by the blue cipher. To change it, I am able to click plus and minus. To concentrate on incoming edges, I select Incoming Edges Only and adopt a number of indirect levels. To make only the outgoing edges visible, I must click on Outgoing Edges Only. In addition, these edges modes provide the possibility to show the hierarchical view. Lumio affords the opportunity to load many views of a project. I use Open View. Now I'm able to choose a view which has been saved, for example, by another developer before. This way it is very easy to change the view fast and concentrate on the specific elements of the graph. If I activate the dynamic mode, Lumio automatically orders the elements according to the number of their edges. Furthermore, I may hide or ignore elements in the graph. Therefore, I select the corresponding button in the menu, which I can access by right-click on a node. Moreover, I can also hide and ignore edges. To superimpose all the elements of the system, nodes and edges that have been hidden or ignored as well, I click on the graph area with the right mouse button and select Expand All. Lumio converts the graph, which I created in the graph tutorial, into a design structure matrix, DSM. This matrix contains all the nodes and the edges as well. The matrix on hand shows the system elements, the nodes, ordered in rows and columns. The edges are symbolized by crosses. I may move elements along the axis. I mark a node and pull it to a new place. Lumio automatically reorders the other X and adjusts the edges. Lumio provides the opportunity to color nodes to configure them. Therefore, I click with the right mouse button onto a node and can assign a color now. In the color menu, I find a big choice of settings I can change. Using the button Node Coloring, I can highlight the node's active degree. Node Data allows me to switch between the active degree, passive degree, activity, and primarily criticality. Despite these settings, I can change colors such as the foreground data or background coloring. Lumio offers us the support to make an automatic triangularization. Therefore, I select the button Triangularization. Now, Lumio minimizes the number of edges below the diagonal and their distance to the diagonal. In the ideal case, all the edges can be placed above the diagonal. Such a system can be run without feedback loops. If this is not possible, the triangularization helps to identify lean processes with a minimal number of loops. To reconstruct the primal order the nodes were initialized in, I select Sort by ID. Another criteria to arrange the matrix is the clustering. The clustering is very helpful in symmetric matrices where the direction of the connection is of small importance. To divide the matrix into clusters, I activate the clustering button. In the clustering menu, I may select the standardization, symmetric or asymmetric, as well as the number of clusters. To save a view, I need to open the file menu and select Save View as New View and add a name. To be sure, I can print the matrix, therefore I must use the print function.
Okay, that was Lumio. I have two more software presentations. I have two more software presentations. Two more software presentations, and then the closing presentations about what's next for Brazil. So bear with me here as I queue up Project DSM. Oh, excuse me, I had three. This particular software tool is from the founder of DSM. His name is Don Stewart. Some of you may know of him. He is the founding father of DSMs. And he and I had some interesting email exchanges about me sharing and talking to you about his software. Yeah. Some of us refer to DSM as Don Stewart's matrix. And so I have an immense amount of respect for this gentleman. He has a software product called PSM32. In fact, the Bosch presentation, in the title, I saw PSM32, but I wasn't sure the matrix was done with this tool. I think it was done with the MIT.
Mistake there. So the title of the presentation.
Yeah.
It's a mistake.
Oh, I see. Okay. So the product is out there. He is more than willing to give you copies of his software to play with and consultation as required. He didn't give me any slides. He didn't want to. He certainly didn't want me to get a hold of the software. But all I'm sharing with you here is first two screenshots of his website. Don't read this now because I'm going to move right next to the next tool application. But I just want to make sure that you're aware that this is yet another product that's out there. And I encourage you to do some surfing and exploration. Okay, so next up is going to be Project DSM. And in this case, I have summary slides, and I also have a video that is narrated. So I think I have it here. Maybe I'm not. Oh no, in this case, I tell you what happened with Project DSM. They gave me actually a YouTube link site. I'm not sure I can get to that YouTube video here, but I have the link there as well. So the link is actually on the last slide in this summary here. Project DSM, there's a software link for information and related topics about their particular tool. As the third bullet says, they're the longest established commercial software package for most of project planning and management. This particular software package is primarily for the project management community. So this is where they hail from. And it's a very easy tool to get up the learning curve on, given that you're more interested in process type DSMs. And they, like all the other software companies, are branching out into the other perspectives of and strengths of DSM, i.e., product DSMs and organizational DSMs. And they have free download of software that they encourage folks to use to get up the learning curve. They're established in 2005, and their modeling capability is, as it says here, no more than about 500 elements. So that's the extent and the size of the model that their tool can handle. And there are some case study references mentioned there as well. And here are their growth plans. I won't read through all of these. Okay. They'll keep focusing on small to medium businesses and project teams. And as in the past, we'll provide training in the use of DSM technology for analysis and planning. These are their contacts. And there's that website link. I am not sure that's going to work here, but let me try. Oh. Let's see if I can...
Hello, my name is Mark Irving and I'm the Technical Manager of Project DSM Proprietary Limited. This talk will introduce Project DSM, the application, to you. We at Project DSM Proprietary Limited started in 2005 when a number of project managers and technical managers realised there wasn't an easy way for small and medium-sized enterprises to pick up and use the DSM methodology. We were intrigued by the DSM methodology and could see how it could help us deliver our projects quicker with less rework and waste, fitting into a lean development methodology. Project DSM allows you to create both time-based projects and static architectures and optimize those projects and architectures using either a clustering or a partitioning approach. In both cases, what we're trying to do is analyze our projects to understand some of the inner workings and the analysis of the dependencies between actions or elements of our projects. We wanted to make Project DSM easy to use by giving you a number of hints, tips and wizards to guide you through the process of defining project data and to analyze the project. So what we're trying to do is make the program easy to use for those who are new to the DSM methodology. So you can see here the blue text are our explainers. We have pop-up tips to help you push the right buttons at the right time, and we have data entry wizards which guide you step by step through the process of creating a project. There are two main ways you can use Project DSM. Firstly, you can look at static systems, which are product architectures, a structure of teams within an organization. So architectures which have no time relation between the elements, but have some dependency relationship between those elements. In a product architecture, we can show the dependencies in a DSM and use clustering analysis to try and group groups of elements which have got connection together and less connection to those other elements outside the group. Our clustering algorithms are optimized to produce clusters with the maximum number of elements within them, with the largest number of links or dependencies amongst them, and to minimize the number of dependencies to elements outside the cluster. The clustering algorithm is non-deterministic and uses a statistical process to determine those clusters. You can see here in the diagram a product architecture, and the algorithm has produced a number of suggested clusters to group elements together. We also have the concept of integration elements. These are elements which often have connection across an entire project, and by marking them as integration elements we can improve the clustering by removing them from the actual problem at hand. You can also see within this slide that we also color code our elements, so that if we have elements within a hierarchy, we can actually show those arms or those subtrees within the hierarchy via color. The other type of projects we can use within the DSM are time-based or project plans. And in these ones we're trying to optimize the cost, the effort, the time to delivery, and more importantly to try and identify where rework could occur and to try and avoid it. In order to enter a project within Project DSM, we identified project tasks, we estimate costs and resources for those tasks, we define dependencies, and within that project dependency step we also have a way of double checking that we have considered all the different possible dependency within the system. And if we add tasks later to the project, that when we go in again and reconsider those dependencies, we have a way of marking which elements have been considered and which elements are yet to be considered. And once we have defined all the tasks and dependencies, we can use the DSM methodology to identify the iteration blocks within the project and try and optimize the project sequence to minimize the potential for rework and for waste in the project. So you can see here a DSM which has in the traditional format showing the elements down the side, the dependencies as red dots between linked activities, and the iteration blocks are the pink blocks which show tightly coupled activities within the project. The advice wizard allows us to either simplify the iteration block by marking an activity to be done at the beginning of the block, the end of the block, or removing a particular dependency which will break the block into smaller blocks. The tearing wizard shows us a number of simplifications we can make and gives us an estimate of the reduction in complexity of the project and the amount of cost or effort which would be impacted by that complexity reduction. And so we can target both trying to minimise the amount of rework in cost terms or in effort terms. You can see in this slide a project which initially has been entered into the system and has a random project sequence, and then after partitioning, the sequence has been redefined to give us mostly sequential activities with one particular iteration block. And with that iteration block, we have promoted 2 activities to the end of the block, thereby disabling a number of feedback dependencies. And so we have now a project plan which has removed the iterations by making a number of assumptions as far as moving an activity to the end. In order to manage iteration blocks, we have been removing dependencies or tearing those dependencies, and this has generated a number of assumptions which are taking the place of those dependencies. Within the application, we manage those assumptions so they are explicit and that we check that those assumptions will be met in the execution of that project. Another view we show within Project DSM is the linchpin view. Linchpins are defined as those activities which have a large impact on subsequent activities. So you can think of these linchpin activities as either those activities which have a lot of dependent cost or activity associated with them, and often linchpin activities may or may not be on the critical path. So they may not be time critical, but they may be project critical. That if there is a failure or a lack of that activity delivering what it was meant to deliver, that could have a large impact on subsequent activities. And so by identifying those linchpins, we can better manage the project. Finally, we show a Gantt chart of the project, which has the traditional view of showing the critical path and activities which can be floated which are not on the critical path, but we also show the iteration blocks as the beige blocks within the Gantt chart. This illustrates examples of, if we look at the small block starting at activity 33, here we have an iteration loop consisting of 3 tasks on the critical path. And so when we traditionally would manage that strongly, we would actually probably also look after the iteration activities and potential for rework. But in the following iteration loop, you can see that only 3 activities are on the critical path, but we have 3 other activities with a significant float which are part of that potential iteration block. If we have a breakdown in our assumptions which we've made, we might see those activities repeated because they are in a codependency block. And so you can see here, this is one area where the DSM analysis helps us identify the risk in our project for activities which might not be on the critical path, could still affect the critical path by their feedback in the dependency loops. Thank you for your patience in listening to this presentation, and I hope you've learnt something of our application, Project DSM. You can always go to our website at www.projectdsm.com and download our application, which you can use for free for 2 weeks to evaluate. I hope that you take time to look at our application, and if there are any questions, please contact us via the contact links on our website. Thank you very much.
Okay, we have one more. Looking at the time here, I think I'm due to be off the stage at 5:15. Is that still the case?
Yes.
So I've got one last software company.
Hello, my name is Mark Irving,
Oh,
and I'd just like a few minutes of your time to explain why we developed.
Okay, sorry about that.
Why?
Stowe. Get right to it. This product also has a video associated with it, narrated. So you'll get a lot more context from the video that I'll share with you afterwards, but this is a little bit about the company. They have 3 products, Soleil Studio, Desk, and Soleil Server. And this is their mission, if you would, empowering experts. They were founded in 2013. Their focus is dependency analysis. And here as well, you can see they have a number of case studies that it's not clear to me whether or not they can share it with folks, but this is just basically saying that they've done work with these particular companies. But that's not to say you couldn't contact them and find out whether or not they can share with you what the companies have given them permission to do. And this is their contact information. Here again, as you see with some of these software companies, they'll give you the opportunity to download the tool for a trial period. So we have one more video, and this one is narrated, thankfully. Okay, minimize. This may run a little long, so I'm probably going to shut it off at about 5 or 6 minutes
To get
after the
started
hour.
with Soleil Studio, we first need to create a new project and give it a project name, in this case, Learning. The first step in each new project is to create a meta model, meaning the definition of the node and edge classes we require to model our domain, and the hierarchical structure of these classes. For this example, we define a node class physical node and 2 node classes that extend this node class named part and product. Then we assign attributes to each class, which can be of different basic types. Creating edge classes works the same way, so we skipped showing you this. After creating the meta model, the next step is to create instances of the node and edge classes. This can be done by manual modeling or by importing data from datasheets or databases. Here we will import data from an Excel sheet and create node instances from it. To do so, we will use a ready-made code snippet that we just have to adapt. Then we can map the data in the worksheet columns to the attributes. We write 2 sequences, one to import the part nodes from one worksheet and the product nodes from another worksheet. Then we create a third sequence, import all, that combines the 2 import sequences. We run this sequence to start the import, and as soon as it is done, we can save the result and view the graph file. The import created a set of part and product nodes, and by selecting the nodes, we can view and edit their properties in the properties pad on the left. Then we want to connect the nodes with edges. We will do this with graph transformation rules. Graph transformation rules can be used to create instances, to alter the graph, do calculations, and run analysis. The rule we write looks for a product and a part node with a matching attribute value, and if it finds a pair like this, it will create an edge between them. If we run the rule on the previous data graph, save the result and open it again, we can see that all products are now connected to the parts they are built from. One can now use the mapping tool to visualize properties in the data graph. For example, we can map the cost of each part node to its size. And then map the quantity of each part node to the color of this node. We will use a linear color grading from green to red. Like that, several data levels are visualized in the graph. Next, we can use the Smart Selector to filter our data graph for specific elements. We could, for example, look for all products that contain less than or equal to 50 parts. Only one of our 3 products is matched by this filter, and we can now select the neighboring elements and then hide this
creates a
product
DSM.
and its parts.
If that's okay, I'm going to cut
We can
this
also
short. It
use
runs a little
different
long,
layout
so
options like the
we'll, cut
organic,
this guy short,
circular,
and again, you'll get
or
access to
hierarchical
these
layout
videos as
for
well as the content I've shared with you. That's the extent of all of the 8 software providers that are what I'm calling DSM symbiotic. And what I'd like to do now is go to the last presentation, which hopefully will be more like a discussion about where we go from here with Brazil. So before we get going on this part of the discussion, all I've done, hopefully, is given you a flyby or a very fast drive-by of what's out there insofar as the products that are being offered by software companies to help you manage your business better than you currently are doing by using these constructs, using these DSM techniques and the like. These tools will fit into the existing portfolio of all of your companies. I've ran that test. These tools have interfaces that will tie into your existing business systems. They're just providing you another visualization of what it is that you're doing and capability to do what-if analysis. I've been using these types of tools for a number of decades. They work. Math is behind it. Objectivity is behind it. It will give you the results you're looking for, given that you know how to use it and how it's being used by others. So I thoroughly encourage folks to get involved with these particular software products. And again, my opinion is you need to get in there and play with them. I learn more by playing with something than by reading and listening to lectures from people like myself. So I am going to work with these software companies to put them all on one location, one site, so you can navigate to them, make your own comparisons, reach out to them. That's my goal. That's what I've discussed with these particular software companies, and they're somewhat amenable to it, except the Japanese for the moment, but I'm still working on those guys.